Tip 1 has to do with what the hands do when the player is preparing for their forehand. And if we go back and watch, you want to use both hands to execute a unit turn. And what we often see with recreational / club / amateur players is that the arm will lead the swing, where the hitting hand will just go back by itself, and the left arm will often stay facing forward. Sometimes you even see this taught to kids with the airplane arms idea. But again, the brain remembers. You want to program yourself right from the start to hit the right way. So if we look at Thiem, you'll notice how long the left hand will stay on the racket. Really, you want to use both hands to initiate the unit turn. And as a general guide, by the time the ball has bounced on your side of the court, you want the back edge of your racket to be facing the back fence. And you want your hands also off to the side. So try this out next time you're preparing if you're a player who has kind of that arm that acts by itself and just goes straight back. If you've worked off that cue to just take your racket back, see how you feel making the turn with both hands, and especially by keeping the left hand on the throat of the racket to help the whole upper body just turn and create separation to the side. Which leads us to the second tip, which is so important, and it's often an issue for club and recreational players, is how well do you use the ground and your body to generate power. Again, going back to that first tip, so many players just try to hit the ball really hard by purely using their arm. But if we look at Thiem, you'll notice a few things. So you'll notice how well he's loaded his body. Look at his legs, especially that back right leg, how much it's bent. And then I want you to actually pay attention to his hips compared to his shoulders. So those are his hips and these are his shoulders. So the shoulders have turned more than the hips and he's sunk into the ground. So he's going to use ground reaction forces and he's going to use separation to basically hit this forehand brutally hard. That's what Thiem, when he was at the top of his game, was known for, is a huge, heavy forehand. And how does he achieve it? Is he uses the ground really well and he creates separation between the segments. So if you're filming yourself from this angle, pay attention to what your lower body's doing, but also what your upper body's doing. Do you have a great load into the ground? So it's not accurate to say just to bend your knees. If you're hitting in that semi-open, you need to sink your back right hip down. And if you're hitting in a neutral stance, you want to feel as if you're sitting in a chair, and that's for the lower body. But look at the upper body. Look at how the hands have turned to the side, which automatically creates that separation that we're after, which is the shoulders turning more than the hips. And all of that energy is basically going to unwind from the ground up into the contact. That's why Thiem can hit the forehand so hard. It's because he's using the ground really efficiently, and he's also using his upper body and his hips and his trunk and his torso really efficiently. Hey, if you're still watching, I'd appreciate if you could like and subscribe. It does help me to grow the channel. And that takes us to tip number 3, which is to create space at the contact. So even if you have a grip between a 3 and a 4, or a number 4, which is a semi-western, what I often see with recreational, club, and amateur players is that the contact is far too close to the body. Even if they are loading fairly well and creating separation, you still need to get the contact away from the body. So we have covered the inside-out component of the swing many times. And just as a quick review, this is what it means. The racket goes from close to the body to away, and that's how you have to move it to really generate the maximum amount of racket speed. This is from Steve Smith at Great Base Tennis, which is the arm is a lever, right? It's the final one in the chain, and you want to swing away from the body and have that racket traveling really fast at the contact. The racket moves fastest away from the body. How can we see how far away Thiem is contacting the ball? Let's lay out here. This is the length of a racket. Comfortably, he's got one more racket length from the hand to the torso. What we often see is players will load the body, but their hand will be too close and their elbow will be tucked in against the body. That inside-out component is really critical to hitting the forehand well. When you're filming yourself, make sure that you're swinging away from the body. It should feel a little foreign, especially if you're not used to hitting that way. And probably the most critical tip that would really help you as a recreational player is what we see here, where the hand finishes and what he's doing with the non-hitting hand. It's called 2-1-2, which is at the start of the swing, you want to have two hands on the racket. So if we go back here and watch Thiem, you'll notice that he has two hands on the racket. Then if we watch, he's got one hand as the body really loads, unwinds from close to away, and then he finishes again with two hands. So this will help recreational, club, amateur players in a few ways. And the first way is it just promotes an idea of a longer hitting zone where the strings really track outwards towards the target if you are forcing yourself to make the catch high by your opposite eye. So where Thiem is making the catch, I would even suggest it needs to be on the handle of the racket, not on the throat. But if you are able to really force yourself to make the catch, you'll feel that the racket goes more upwards and outwards towards the target, and you will finish really high. This also ties into how narrow the court is, 19.6 degrees from the center of the court. So you don't have a lot of space to create a horizontal swing. If we look at the racket face, you'll notice it's really going upwards in the few frames before contact, during contact, and after. And then yes, it'll fold across. And using those two hands at the end will really help you to keep that vertical swing away from the body as opposed to folding across too soon. And the other part of finishing with two hands is just racket awareness. It'll help you to reset really quickly into ready position with both hands. If you're aware of where that racket is, and you can use that left hand to guide it into the appropriate place.